Everyone loves watching people overcome ridiculous odds and achieve their goal, whether it be in professional sport, interplanetary travel, or even OG winning the 2018 Dota International. Humans achieving the near impossible is always a good time, especially when it is the underdog story. Those who must work that extra bit harder to get what everyone else gets easier. Sometimes though, it is how people go about things that really impresses us. Firefighters run marathons in their gear, your mate demolishes that half a slab in 2 hours, or Diego does this. This may also help you understand why some people love their low tiers or refuse to drop that difficult character. Every time you play, you get to be the underdog, making victory that much sweeter. But if you never win, you're just a big loser. And you're most likely going to be giving them the boot for that sweet, sweet top tier. So this is nice and all, but what makes a character difficult? What aspects of the character gives people that pride when sharing who they play on the forums? Well, let's start with the most fitting and simplest to explain, the baddies. If in Counter-Strike I have a Glock and you have the AK, well, it's pretty much curtains unless you're a bot and I'm fragging out of my mind. With equally skilled players, the rifle player should win every time. Sometimes in a fighting game, you just lose at the character select screen. Okay, that's a bit of an exaggeration, but unless you're playing the original Street Fighter, some characters are just going to be worse than others. A lot worse. Some characters are designed to be bad as the goal, a prime example being Dan from Street Fighter 4. Whether it be his pitiful attacks or his special needs specials, having an almost objectively worse character makes him a difficult character to use. You are handicapping yourself when you play this character. Now whether you're doing that to prove something or you just really relate to the character, well, that's something that you have to figure out. Most fighting games though just have a character which ends up being worse off than the others, through no malicious intent by the developer. When characters have different strengths and weaknesses, someone must be the best and someone must be the worst. In Tekken, things are a lot closer in terms of viability, though even characters like Gigas and Anna still have to fight that uphill battle against the rest of the cast. An interesting side note to explore though, is that with these characters, fewer people play them, meaning you do have the immediate advantage when picking them up, as your opponent may lack information on how to deal with them, but the longer the set goes, the easier time your opponent will have. In older games that didn't get balance fixes, if you loved a bad character, you had to brave it and figure something out that worked because no one was coming to rescue you. And even in 2020, I'm pretty sure they're not coming to save Gigas. The second are the mechanical monsters, the characters that require hundreds of hours in the lab to perform tasks that others may be able to output with 30 seconds of practice. These are the character archetypes that people love to show off, and they're also found across a plethora of genres. After Furion, Invoker was my favourite hero when I played Dota, and instead of clicking one button to cast a spell, Invoker would have to remember a combination of 3 orbs to conjure up a spell before he could cast it, which also had its specific key binding. This is an example of what a more mechanically demanding character may look like. In fighting games, they could have ridiculously difficult combos, insanely tight links, crazy inputs, or just have a lot of things that the player must juggle to achieve their goal. Now the interesting thing about these characters is the balance of them. Some games have these difficult characters be extremely polarizing in their output, where if you play them bad, they do bad, and if you play them good, well then they do great. Other games, you are really breaking your hands just to achieve competency. I believe almost everyone has a soft spot for these characters, because they don't just win, they do it with flair. I love these characters. I love when they have a ceiling that seems so distant that I could play forever and never achieve it. But sometimes I do look at the more basic character and wonder what could be. Then we have the strategy savants, those whose game plan must be intricate and complex enough to account for everything. A whole subgenre was born from people who suck at strategy games, a genre which boomed and overshadowed the RTS because, let's be honest, using Brainhard. Some characters require a lot of pre-planning, where you have to lab different scenarios and specific setups or counters. In a genre where there is already a lot of mental fatigue, where you must also consider a lot of general options and character-specific things, you want to be very comfortable with your character. And the less you have to think about your character, the more you can focus on your opponent. There are two main pathways these characters take. They can have a huge pool of moves, in which to use the character to their maximum potential, they must utilize all these moves in certain scenarios. These are very expressive characters, and when you watch top level players play them, they never play the same way. You then have characters which are designed in a way that's a little more challenging in playstyle. This could be a character having poor tools to open up opponents in a meta all about getting in on people. Or maybe having a character designed around laying traps or summons, those things that take a few extra IQ points. There could be a lot of mind games going on, possibly having to condition opponents into getting used to one thing and then mixing them up. Now every character is somewhat a hybridization of these types, and in games like Tekken where it's just difficult to play the game well in the first place, it makes sense to keep things reliable so you can always play well. Games are meant to be played for fun, and there is a lot of fun to be had with not only defeating your opponent, but refining your skills with a difficult character. Now also, if you subscribe today, you'll get a sweet 5-day buff for learning difficult characters. Bye!